Hello, I'm Penelope Maver and welcome to Earth Converse podcast, where we explore our relationship and conversations with the earth, all in the hope of inspiring a better connection with ourselves, each other, and the earth that is our home. And today I'm very excited to have a key influence in my life. I mentioned I had a few in episode 1, and one of those people just right here with me, Emerald North. She's connecting from New Mexico, and she was also the guide that I mentioned in episode 2, that when I said I'd met a tarantula, and she said, of course a Penelope meets a tarantula. So she is a poet, a artist, and a vision guide, and I'm just delighted to have her here. And so as before, I'm just going to invite, every so often, I'm going to give an opportunity for you to reflect on your own story, and I'll mark it by the forest sound, and pause at this point or not, it's up to you. So before I start with Emerald, I'm going to invite you to stop and reflect. I think I just swallowed a fly. Like a little mosquito. That's interesting.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's nothing to say.
One default.
So just wherever you are, wherever you're listening to this podcast, just take a moment and maybe a deep breath, a conscious breath, and get your feet on the ground, and just would like you to reflect on the connection you've had with yourself and the earth this week. So it's a short reflection, but welcome Em. It's just such a pleasure. So how would you introduce yourself?
Oh, wow. Let's see. Today I would say I am a woman of the earth. I am an artist, a poet, a guide, but most of all, I am a human being that is deeply connected and living with, on, and through the living earth around me day to day. They're my closest friends. They, the birds, the trees, the bugs, the garden, the sun, the wind, even the dust, they're all intimate. They are the environment. And so today I am a woman of my environment. I think we all are, actually, whether aware of it or not.
And how did that's the big question. How, in terms of you became aware of that connection, and how has your relationship evolved with nature over time? Just, share stories.
Well, I don't remember a time when being outdoors in nature wasn't, a connected experience for me. Mm-hmm. My earliest memories are camping. My earliest memories are like riding the neighbor's horse, which of course was probably very old when I was 4. I just climbed on it. I remember being a child, and to me, climbing, I thought I climbed to the top of the trees, and I would sit there and I would watch the world go by. I felt closer to the trees than to people. And I've always felt that way. Now, I grew up in a family in which wasn't really being a connected part of a human clan wasn't really our way, shall we say. It was very chaotic and dysfunctional and painful. It was the 50s, So it wasn't a time of prosperity in any way, physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. So I grew up without a sense of belonging except through and by the land. I mean, I truly feel like I was, just, maybe it's a natural kind of intelligence that I have, but landscape and land connection. When I was 13, I was deeply depressed and very alone, and sitting on a river and feeling badly about myself and life. And the river was the first time I consciously remember in my mind in a way that ever spoke to me in my mind and said, basically, don't worry, you belong to me. And it wasn't, I knew inside me, it wasn't me, whatever that means. Now, at this point in my life, because of course it's evolved until it's become my entire work, as a painter and as, a rites of passage guide. So it's that relationship that is, for me anyway, the most powerful relationship of my entire life. I mean, I love humans, but I don't even have a partner, human partners in the same way most people do. Because for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter. But the land has always been the doorway, and to creative gifts and intelligence and spiritual awareness and this feeling of not being alone. I am not alone when I'm alone on the land. I am so not alone.
When did you first have that feeling? When you were like 4 on the horse, or at the river when you were
that I don't know it for, but at 13 on the river, it was the first time I actually understood it's the first time I really experienced the land or the nature as a living being talking to me. And I feel like some people have asked, like, what do you do to connect to nature? I go, well, maybe if you stop trying, nature connects to you. You see, I don't feel like I went out to get. I was a very upset, lonely, depressed child, and nature came to me, and I accepted that, and I still do. Nature comes to me as well as me to nature. When I'm walking, like today, I walk in juniper trees and down arroyos, and I sing, and I just sing songs I make up, but we are one environment. I am in their environment. And they in mine. And so because I'm aware of the connection, so are they. I'm aware that the trees are connected to me. They're not dumb. In fact, I think they're quite more brilliant than us. They've been here a lot longer. So I think they're more evolved in many levels. So at any rate, for me, the connection is mutual. And it saved my life, truly, from not being able to experience myself as part of something, because I didn't feel part of my family. I didn't feel part of my community. I didn't feel part of my church, and I certainly didn't part of my school. And I barely had friends until, in my mid-20s or so, when things happened to change my psyche rather strongly, shall we say. What I would call a spiritual crisis. And that wasn't so much guided by nature. That was more of a deeply internal process.
I just, were you on the, were you lived on a farm, or like, were you?
No, I actually lived in Seattle, which was a city, but in the, I also lived outside of Seattle. Like that horse thing was a tiny town called Bothell, an hour from Seattle, which is now a city, of course, Bothell. So that's, in those days, even in the city, there were vacant lots and trees and no sidewalks. And, so I lived in the north end of Seattle, but it was rural. It was like a rural town today. Yeah, we moved all over the place. And it wasn't really until I was about 30 that I stopped living in cities completely, because I was called other places.
And yeah,
nature calls me. I don't get a choice. It calls up and says, you go there, and I do it.
Go on, continue. Yeah, about that call.
Not so much now, but but that's because it's, doorways come to you at the time of your life when you're younger more than when you're older. I'm not looking to become. I'm trying to figure out how to stop. Really. I mean, I'm more into how will I gracefully remove myself from my work, which has been a big service to the people. It has been. And it's not only me, it's my connection to the ceremony that allows the land and the ceremony to be a great service to the people through what I have learned to hold. Because I hold a container. I am not the teacher. I am not anything other than this person who has the ability, along with my co-guides, to hold a container so that everyone can experience their own personal relationship with the ceremonial aspect of themselves in nature, in the natural world, which does speak in its own ways to everybody differently, of course.
But how did you I don't know whether actually to go to there now to your work and how you do that container, and you're I know many are even like a I can feel I've been in your presence where it has been like you're channeling something through nature through you. It is you're like both a channel or a translator or this wonderful mirror.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually know. There's all kind of words. Channel I don't particularly like too much, mostly because when I was young, I gave myself over, whatever that means, to energies, if that exists, even outside of myself, that I perceived outside of myself. And I learned through that experience that, no, I don't go anywhere. I am utterly and completely responsible. Yeah. What I do is, because I am married to something, I don't know how else to put that. I open, I open the doorway, but I don't go anywhere. It's my mind and my experiences and my, it's a marriage. It's my relationship. So when I am working, you see the wholeness of me. And most of us, including me, I mean, I'm not always like this grand wise being when I'm sitting in my house yelling at the computer. I'm like, and I do yell at
people. For sure. I suppose also that intensity can only probably be a short time, when you're truly present and all your gifts in front of somebody, that's being.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, and I don't know why, because I was very shy and I couldn't even talk in groups of people until I was in my, till really I started to do this work, but like I said, I did and do experience some sort of marriage. And I believe it's with the higher self, with larger, and who knows, it could be more than that. And I don't need to know. But
married to the earth, married to end the.
Yeah, to whatever this is, it's more than just this a conscious ego human being. And I don't really need to name it so much other than I know. And when I am there, I experienced wholeness. And we teach that in the 4 shields, the 4 parts of the human. But when you can really move around all parts of yourself, then there's a wholeness. Maybe that's the higher self. Maybe it's God. Maybe it's, I don't know, an alien from some planet. I don't care, and maybe it's none of those things, but just me in relationship to nature, because I feel when I'm out, and when I am alone on the land almost every day. And I almost, not always, but almost always, there's intense connection. I can reach miles and miles away through my physical eyes and touch the mountains. And I feel touched and touch. And I think they like me. They say they do as much as I like them. So, it's mostly about that. I mean, like most relationships, mostly it's, hi, how are you today? Oh, welcome back when a plant comes back in the spring. Mostly it's that kind of thing, except in when you're doing, working with ceremonial intent or working with an issue or praying. I pray constantly now for the people, for the land. And by the people, when I say the people, I don't mean just humans. I mean, all of the children of earth. And praying for doesn't mean, ooh, it means really singing, because I almost always singing the blessing energies. Because to me, that there's, I'm way into the river these days. Everything I paint is a river. And it's interesting, at 13, there was the river. But So, I sing the river and I'm in the river and I bring everybody with me, and hoping I do things like, because I'm in this place and I feel like I have the support of the land and the spirits that have loved and cared for the land for thousands. And I say things like this, thousands and thousands of years, ooh, and evokes out of me this feeling of of being able to move the river in a certain direction. And by that I mean being able to stay the hands of violence is one of my biggest prayers, because you get people locked down, and I know damn well what happens behind closed doors in some families. I grew up in one, a family with closed doors and lots of yelling and screaming and hitting. And so stay the hands of violence. I feel like I put myself that all over the world right now, who's ever about ready to do it will stop. I calling all angels. I found my self-singing for a month. And I change the words constantly as I'm singing, because it depends, So to me, singing, and I highly recommend people sing without because nobody's there, nobody can hear you. And if you're truly singing, it makes the words flow and the prayers happen without so much, I'm doing it right, or whatever, at least for me.
That intuitive felt sense of, and just spontaneous interactions.
Yeah. And it also kind of invites, for me anyway, the child.
Yes, it sounds.
And without our beginning in innocence, when I take a walk, unless I'm really into my cups about something, or I'm in innocence. I'm open, and that's what it is. What's here today. And allowing, to me, that's allowing the river to see where you are. Rivers, when they hit obstacles, they go around them. Or if they hit a drop off, man, I want to drop off if I'm going to drop like a river, So, I think about that all the time. I think about it, sing about it. I want to die like a river.
It is interesting that you are painting, that you are returning back to the river.
Back and back and back. I mean, I've been painting. I'm finishing a painting now that's on the river, but I've been doing a lot of, I do ceramics as well. So I've been glaze painting plates that are, every single one is the river. And of course I do work above the Rio Chama in New Mexico on the river, and I live on the Rio Grande. And when I lived in Big Pine, I lived on right by the Big Pine Creek River. It's, the Owens River. So I'm always, ever since I moved to the desert, I've been surrounded by water. And when I lived in Seattle, I didn't live on any river. So anyway, so I don't know. And none of this has been like planned. I never went out and said, now I'm going to go, be on the river.
Yeah, but that literally, I like that also in terms of the conversation flowing too. There's one thing about the innocence. I remember you said, when one of the exercises was to go out and reclaim your innocence.
Yes, go out and find something and reclaim something of your innocence, whatever that means to the person.
Yeah.
Because we talk about what innocence is. We'll talk about the South Shield and the body and the child and the emotional flexibility of children, because children embody. Everybody who's a child or a parent knows that. Children, 2-year-olds go, ah! They don't go, I'm mad at you, mommy. That's not until they're older. So a child is embodied. A child isn't censoring their emotional field. I mean, that's part of what people are trying to do to children. Pipe down, settle down. And a lot of people have an inner child that's just wanting to, come out, like the kids, I'm sure, in Spain.
Yeah.
Burst out.
Absolutely.
So people burst out because they don't know how to flow. Sure. I live in a world in myself where my innocence is a daily part of me. So I don't have to overflow with rage.
Yeah, because of that. Well, that flow.
Right. Or whatever feeling, overflow with helplessness and all these things. And so when you go out on the land with a mission, if you choose to accept it, to find something of your innocence and allow something to happen.
Nice.
And then they come back with a story.
Yeah, and just I mean, it's a and people will, can pause as long as they like, but the little music will be a point of that. So I'll just put it there. And that's an invitation, yeah, to go out and reclaim your innocence, or how's your inner child, yeah, feeling at the moment.
Yeah.
So,
Just go out and see what happens.
Oh, nice.
And then come back and tell the story of what happened. And it doesn't matter whether you tell the story even to another person. Maybe you look in the mirror and you tell yourself what happened when you went on the land and retrieved something of your innocence. Because when we work, that's what the people do. They come back, they tell the story, the guides in our wisdom reflect what we hear in the story. And because I've heard so many stories, I don't know, thousands and thousands of stories, I've gotten pretty good at mirroring back, we call it, just mirroring what the person has actually said they experienced out there. And people often don't see it, because in many ways, this kind of being in nature is just a slight turn of the head and looking with a different perspective. And so when I work with people, usually I like to go around all four shields.
Actually, just to sorry, Em, how would you summarize? I mean, the Vision Fast experience, or the work that you do. How would you do? And then, actually, yeah, I mean, goodness, if you touch on the four shields, that's.
How would I summarize it?
I mean, it's such
as you know, as the basic rite of passage. Rite of passages were part of every culture, and I believe very much part of European culture that was destroyed as the marauders went through every part of the world, including Europe. And what was the question?
How would you describe the work that you do? You know, like, I mean,
that.
Rites of Passage and.
For me, what I'm doing is whoever comes has a call, and they don't necessarily consciously, they're not able maybe to consciously say what that is. And so my job is to listen to them well enough that I hear what they say they are here on the earth to do. And by asking questions and listening. But not only listening with these human ears, yes, of course, and everybody in the circle, the whole circle is listening and holding, and a field, what I call a field, or the river, the energy gets stronger and stronger, but also the trees are listening, and then the bones in the person are listening, and the ancestors are listening. And so that everybody's listening to what this human being will bring out of the self. And oftentimes what people bring out is something they've known forever, but are also afraid to say. Like, I am a teacher. I am whatever it is. I am an artist. I am a singer, whatever it is, and I am a loving woman with a gift that is a gift to the world. And to be able to say it, and then the rite of passage is to take that jewel that you are. And it takes faith, because nothing's 100%. It takes a lot for us. We go, oh no, I'm not 100%. Well, nothing. Nothing anywhere is ever 100%. So good, huh? So you really take yourself through the threshold, which is the liminal space. They call it a space in which the person's alone, in our tradition anyway, for 4 days and nights, with their intent and whatever nature wants to come and bring to them, and they to nature. It is a relationship. We like to think of nature as, I don't know, separate dead individuals. To me, nature is a goddess. I mean, and more than that, there's masculine and feminine. I mean, it's not some small nicety. There's also, there's death here. Everything exists in this place. And to me, the ceremony takes the person to the place where the two worlds meet, the actual desert and the mythological desert that's been evoked by all the preparation and the ceremony of threshold and the time alone and without food. It is evoking whatever is going to happen for that person. And I see the rite of passage truly is separating from all kinds of notions about who we think we are, and stepping into at least for us, and this is an initiated adult role with a gift and a responsibility to bring that gift to the people, whatever that gift ends up being. That's not my job. I don't know. It's the person's job. Yeah. And nature, and it's already in them to actually stand up, like I had to when I was young, to actually stand up for yourself and become, and put down everything you've been told you are or are not, because you're not. I mean, nobody really knows you except you. And I think that's hard for many of us to get, but, you know, and we know far more than we're willing to admit, I think. So the rite of passage then is to bring that gift that you find through your experience out there back into the circle, back across the threshold. And we do ceremonies where the story is told, and all that is bringing the gift back. And it's my job as a guide, our jobs as guides, to see the gift and to mirror the gift. I'm always looking for the gift. Even if a person's annoying, there's a gift. Yes, of course, there's annoying people. Oh my God, I'm annoying, So it's really all about getting large enough inside ourselves to accept that we're quite gifted. Mostly that's for Americans anyway, to accept how gifted we are and let that sit alongside how shadowy we are, so we can move the wheel around to wholeness. And when I can accept my shadow and my gifts, I can move into an initiated adult.
Well, yeah, actually, I've got a question I want to say about that collective wheel as well. But tell us about the wheel. So what is the essence of that and moving through that? So you've gone from the child in the south, and
the child would be in the south, and then we move, and this is the wheel of human nature. Nature, for me, it's actually humans within nature, reflected in nature. So, the child and all its emotional flexibility, and it's like summer, it's abundance of food, everything's there, moves to like in adolescent where it's the time of the fall, we're going inside. And adolescents, that is their job. So all of that emotional flexibility of the child becomes feeling and going internal. So the adolescent will smolder and brood and wonder, and who am I? And that's really the job of the adolescent, to discover who I am, because the gifts I carry are hidden there in the West. When I can stop being the good boy or the good girl or the bad boy or the bad girl, whatever the person's been told they are by everybody. Usually the child's told the same thing at school and at home. You are whatever it is, loving, stupid, whatever, and then the adolescent has to go inside the cave of the self and go, okay, now who am I? It's a painful journey. Many people don't choose to make it, to totally, to go through it. So the adolescent's job is to find self-love through finding their own gifts and then discarding the things out of themselves that are not true. It may take half your life to discover, no, I'm not stupid. And then that's the gift. The gift isn't so much the knowledge that you're not stupid, but the gift is the determination and the soulfulness to sit in pain and darkness and confusion and not run away until you get it, whatever it is that time, because it goes over and over in a lifetime, and we all go through it over and over and over again. But when you cannot run away and you can come out with self-knowledge and self-love into a dedicated life, which is the North Shield, the adult. This is our work. This is winter. This is when we take care of the people. This is love of the people. The child is sensual love of discovery in the body, and the adolescent is self-love. It's about self-love, and the adult, it's love of the people, love of the community, love of the entire universe, really, and it's commitment. and structure and form and work and doing the things that must be done so that we can all live together, and take care of each other. And if we do that, if we bring ourselves into that place, we will be illuminated, which is the E-shield. Which some people put the elder there, but I don't. I think that's the birth death door. That's where we came from and where we disappear to, and I don't know what happens either way. But it's a big mystery. So that's that place. And that's also everybody always, that's the spirit, right? And everybody, even babies, have spirit. So you always have spirit. And this whole ceremony is basically, the spiritual realm is deeply evoked. And what I mean, when you're in both worlds at the same time, I mean that to me, that there is spirit, and trees do talk, and they talk English to me, but not to everybody.
So what, like a spirit in your own experience of going, I don't know, going out to nature in the 4 days and 4 nights yourself, or being mirrored back, or going around the 4 shields. What's a profound moment in your story?
You mean in one of my stories?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going immediately to my last fast. Now, I think I'm going to fast during the women's fast that was going to happen in a couple of weeks. I think I may go out there and do it.
Yeah.
But at any rate, my last fast, which was 2.5 years ago in Death Valley, I went in, and it was, oh God, it was, don't ever do this. No, it was very, very windy and very, very cold. And I had already done 2 weeks in the wind and the cold because I had been guiding the midwinter fast, and the weather was just horrible, like below freezing cold. And so I don't remember what my original intent was, but it was never truly solid in me. And I remember I sat in the icy cold wind for 3 days. I wasn't miserable. I know how to be warm. I had down coats, but there were times I was miserable. But I also didn't want to be anywhere else. And I was looking at this elder's face in the mountain, whom I've talked to and seen many times now, the whole time, until my intent was clear to me. And that's when, because I had been, I'm not a privilege. I didn't come from privilege. So I was afraid of what's going to happen to me as I get old, right? Financially. And so basically the intent that came to me from sitting in the icy wind for days was, if I can remember right, I am something like I am an elder with many possibilities and options and opportunities to generously give my gifts and to generously care for myself, something like that. And since that time, it's been true. And it's more and more true. I'm no longer so concerned, even now that our world's in a place where, gosh, everybody I know could be on the streets, yeah.
You are one of the most generous people I know, actually.
Yeah. I wish. Yeah, I don't know how to be. Yeah, it's what makes me feel like I'm being myself. I don't know. I don't like being stingy at all, even when I am, because I am sometimes. I want the big piece of chocolate cake. No.
So where are we at? Like, or what are the other, like, in terms of, I mean, it's a lifetime. You've lived in the land for a lifetime, I remember you saying to me, so you lived up, like how many years? 20 years, in the land, like basically without a house.
Oh, well, that was 10 years about. Yeah, in the 80s. I left the world in the 80s and disappeared into, well, first it was like one community that had, lots of groups coming through. But then I disappeared into a cult for 7 years or so, my opinion, a cult. And I think, it's not that I wasn't guided to that. I was, because I had guidance from the time I was in my mid-20s, and my entire life was in shatters. I'd been married and divorced and gone to college and quit college and all kinds of stuff. And just shattered because I didn't have any sense of myself. I didn't have a way to look at myself. My West Shield, like we were just talking about, was like, just like I couldn't see at all. And so I had what I would call a spiritual crisis, in which I got even confused about who and where and what I was, and couldn't sleep. And some people would call it a psychotic episode. But it went on for a short period of time, and I don't want to go into the whole story other than when it was complete, it was complete. And I made a decision that changed me. And I made a decision that, the decision was truly that I am, that I am whole, and so at any rate, because of this experience, I slowly got put back together again, and I went to therapy, and I just met the right people at the right time in the right place for years on end. And then I did dance movement therapy for 5 years in my 20s, late 20s. And it brought everything into alignment. By that, I mean, I learned how to be fully embodied, including as the demon. I'm serious. And then it was the first time I think I really experienced spirit, whatever that is, physically flowing through me. It was through dance. Many people experience that, dance and movement. And then I followed that. It was what I call like the medicine called me. And I went to a medicine wheel gathering that Sun Bear had done in 1979. And it just like, I saw the medicine pipe and I couldn't stop crying for days. And so I had no choice but to follow the call. I really didn't have a choice. Ever since I was in my 20s, the call would come, like for dance movement therapy, do this. And for me, it's always had to be that clear with this sense in myself, go there, and I do it. I just did it, because the call was so strong. Nothing else mattered, So I ended up with Jaime Storm for 7 years and learned how to say completely and deeply no. No. No, I know, and a no to abusive relationships where there's all kinds of yelling and screaming and, oh my God, bullshit. I am the great teacher, bullshit. Things like, I'm a national treasure. Bullshit. You're a human being. And when I met Stephen and Meredith a few years after I left, because I lived out on land, like you said, the entire 80s, basically, they were human beings sitting on the ground doing exactly what my body, I just knew immediately. It was like, oh my God. And they always said, we're not the teachers. That's why we're guides. What we know is how to hold a container and show you, there's the door, there's the doorway. We're going to sit here and we're going to wait for you till you come back. But the real work happens on the other side of the doorway. And then the most difficult work happens when you come back, bringing it home, bringing it to the community. I've done this over 30 times, and it's not easy, but I can't even imagine a different kind of life, because I don't know how people live. What do they do? I sit around and go, what do they do? They don't do art.
Land, you mean? In terms of if they don't go out into the land.
Yeah, if they don't go out onto the land and have this kind of relationship, if they don't do art, if they don't sit in circles, how do they have any sense of who they are? And isn't that one of the reasons our world is falling apart, maybe deservedly so?
Well,
all restaurants, I'm sorry, everybody needs jobs. I know, I have no idea how to figure it out.
But where are we with that, our relationship, or where is the conversation with the earth and nature at a collective level, do you think?
Well, I think it might have gotten better in the past 2 months, in that people, when you slow down, no matter how you slow down, I'm sure that many people are just looking out the window at a tree. so they can get some sense of outdoors in some places. But just slowing down will connect us to our own inner nature more. And I imagine there might be a lot of people who go, oh, I don't mind working at home. Oh, I really don't miss going out and eating in restaurants 5 times a week. God, my digestion's better. Wow, look, the sky is clear for the first time. So those kind of things may make people not be so willing to jump right back into normal. I hear all this normal and I go, oh, I know we have a big problem. We have a whole lot of people to feed and house. But normal was lives of, at least for most people, working class people, lives of desperation. And I mean, can you imagine working in a meat packing company where now Trump is telling them you can't even stop if you get sick? You know, we need our meat. Oh, it's horrible, horrible work. You know, so when people don't have an opportunity, and Rites of Passage is about finding your work and bringing meaning to the world through you using the gifts that you have. And if you can't use them, and I've met so many young people who ask me, how, I have all this, how do I give it? I don't have an answer. All you can do is keep trying and follow what calls you. I just got set on a path and it went. I don't think that happened. Maybe it does happen for people now. I don't know. But it's like when people don't have an opportunity to create work of meaning, whatever that means to them, and I can get meaning out of gardening and cooking, let me tell you. But
like, how do we start on that? And I think sometimes, but that's right in front of us, isn't it? I mean, we're surrounded by nature right here. You know, it's
right.
You know, but gardening,
yeah.
That can be sometimes the door to a dark.
Yes. Oh, well, certainly for me, a big door. I'm a big time gardener. You know, I love gardening. I mean, yeah. And knowing how to grow food, one part of my training, even with someone like Storm, I ran a farm. I killed ducks, geese, turkeys, chickens, rabbits. I gutted them, cooked them, fed them. I grew food, you know, and I also grew a medicine garden. And to me, that is nature, a specific kind of work of nature. It's different than the wildlands, you know, but it's a real personal relationship with a what I consider even a goddess, or a living entity, which is the garden. That garden, my garden is the garden that I've worked with for 14 years, and we know each other. And that includes the trees and the neighbors' trees. It's like all of the plants have roots connected all over the world. I mean, it's like the fences aren't only there for us, not for them. So the garden is, especially, I highly recommend it. City people, even potted plants. I mean, it's all you have to do is go, hi there, how are you today? That's it. And then see what happens over 40 years.
Actually, I might just do a little reflection pointer here, and just in terms of, I just put the forest noise on. Actually, I'll pose it first. But how can the simple things of gardening and cooking we can have a different relationship with it.
Yeah. And I don't know if it has to do with my specific personality type, but everybody would find something that's similar. For me, it's gardening. Maybe it's some people will be doing an orchard. It's a different kind. Some people it's more structured kinds of farming, or working with rocks, or whatever it is, because it has to be your call. And gardening is just as creative as painting, and to me anyway. And just as, and you really can't have one without the other. I mean, as a painter and a sculptor, gardening is an excellent creative outlet for when I cannot do those, because I paint when I can paint. I I do ceramics when that's what's there, and I garden when that's what's there, and I cook always, and I like to move around. And even walking and singing is creative because the song is new every time because I make it up as I'm singing because it's a relationship I'm singing to and with, you know.
I've just got this lovely thought of you singing. I remember you singing Sunshine. You are my sunshine.
Oh, that
My
one is.
only sunshine. I remember you singing that to me when I came back off the land. So it'll stay with me.
Yeah.
But the collective conversation, I guess, or where are we as a society? Are we in the South? This obsessed with the growth, and or child. We haven't done our initiation. We're as a sort of a collective when we're resistant to go into the West and the.
Well, we're kind of going there right now.
Yeah.
I think this pandemic is an opportunity for initiation into a more global mind if enough of us are willing to go there. I see two kinds of probably far more than that, but two general kinds of ways of being right now. Those who are more concerned about the collective, and those who don't seem to be able to see that. And it's not that they're not concerned, is that they can't go beyond, I got to take care of my life. And there's it's almost like everything's a football game to some people. I mean, there's me, mine, and then there has to be an opposition to fight. So immediately in this pandemic, it's, China made it in a lab, and to stir up all this completely stuff that there's no, as far as I know, there's no proof of anything, just so that we can keep everything in the dichotomy instead of, we are a wholeness, and boy, this is big, and how the hell are we going to move this, and how do we take care as best we can, not perfectly, as best we can, all of us. And if we can go through that doorway, we might actually survive as a species. If we can't, look at it, we're going to boil ourselves to death. I will be gone because I was smart. I got born in 1951. And there was still land.
And what will take us? I mean, that sort of, because people are in anxiety, aren't they? It's sort of like that fear, like, I just want to look after, that's just.
Yeah, I mean, all we can do, I mean, I used to actually agonize far more about what to do, because all I can do is what I can do. And what I can do is sing and pray. And I am very powerful. Now, if I am, so are you, because I'm nobody. I mean, I mean that. If the leaders of the world were looking for somebody that was nobody, it'd be me. So if I can do it, anybody can do it, as long as they're authentically themselves. And I think if enough people could drop into the true and honest place of holding space for the collective, when they can, it's not a job. It happens naturally, and that maybe I even call all angels. And when I do, I am in my mind, anything I can imagine. And then I call everything I can't imagine, known and unknown, felt and unfelt, seen and unseen, anything that's there. Hey, help!
Yeah. But
you don't have to believe it
enough, like actually call out, all the beings, non-beings, because that's
maybe they can't hear us if we don't call out. And I call out loud. Now, I also have a very loud voice, so I'm sure people sometimes hear me, but I also walk where nobody can see me or hear me, because I always have that place, because Spirit likes me. So find a place, and that's what, for me, I sing it often. Like I said, because it's just like a river, and then I don't censor myself. I think the most important thing we can do for ourselves is to stop censoring the child that just wants to bubble out their good will, And that's all they really want. And so that is what prayer is to me, is bubbling out my goodwill and asking whatever else has goodwill in the known and unknown universe, whatever that is, please come now. And maybe it helps. Maybe somebody who was about to smack their wife stops. You know, maybe somebody, I don't know, doesn't drink and drive. I don't know what it is, but it just maybe. It makes a difference for us as a collective. If they reopen the countries, at least in Scamerica, my favorite name for us, wrongly or too soon and all about money, people aren't going to come. If we really have it, so people say, no, I'm going to take care of me and my family, and we're not going to go spend all this money in restaurants or wherever it is, golf courses, wherever, the movie theaters, wherever it is they want us to go. No, I'm going to work from home. And no, I kind of like being at home with my family now. Not so bad. I like cooking. So, and yeah, that devastates. It changes the economy. We have to be willing to change.
Yeah.
And we have to support people so that we can change. Instead of this nonsense.
Helps us with that. You know, we know that is it. Isn't nothing is ever static. So that we can go through that. We can go through that cycle.
Well, it could even be this virus is here because it's naturally occurring out of the earth. And I don't mean that as a conscious, the earth is going, now I'm going to punish people. No, it's occurring because of how we live. I heard it attaches to air pollution, you know, and that maybe it's giving us the opportunity to stop and make a different thing, which means we have to care for the people first. It means guaranteed annual income. I don't care, not all these hoop jumping, you know, blame the poor programs and endless paperwork. And while some people sit on their fat haunches and look down their noses and, you know, call their hairdresser to come to their house, and then the hairdresser gets eaten by an alligator as she leaves. That just happened. I went, oh my God, she got her hair done. No. I don't know. The world is just too fucking strange, isn't it? You have to bleep that, I suppose. No.
Oh, I'm gonna laugh. Oh my goodness. So, where are we? I guess where did that sort of, you know, the faith of that? It sounds like from the river that 13 being spoken to, and throughout, you know, your life, you've just followed that. And I guess there's where that faith of calling out the beings and the non-beings, you know.
Yeah, and I followed it because I didn't have a choice, because I didn't have anybody. And so, you know, we look back in our lives. I stopped telling my terrible story many years ago, because my terrible story is the prima materia of me. Without it, my God, if my mother hadn't hated me at birth, would I have been available? No, I probably would have become a really good mommy, you know, and gotten all involved in the I am not of the world. You know, Jesus said, be in the world, but not of it. And I am not of the culture, anybody's culture, really. And so, but that's my natural way. Yeah. That's natural to me. So all I know is that what happened between the time of the river speaking to me at 13 and the psychological meltdown at 25 was pure hell. So when people come to me and I experience the pure hell that is vibrating out of their pain, I know it. I also know there's a doorway. I also know it's a gift when you can take it through the doorway with you, when you don't go, no.
That is the journey, isn't it? And I know for myself, like, where meditation only gets you so far. You have to go into that. Yeah.
And I would say the same with this kind of deep soul work and therapy. You know, I was trained as a therapist, and
Mm.
I realized after 5 or 6 years that I would spend my entire life in the dungeon of therapy in the darkness if I kept doing that work.
Yes, yes.
So you can it's like, I like to think of it, if you think of the West Shield as, you know, you go down a cave all the way till you hit bottom, right? And they even talk about with alcoholic stuff, you hit bottom. Well, once you get down there, you don't need to pick up a shovel and keep digging. It's
Yes.
time to rise.
Mm. Mm.
And
Rise like
and that,
phoenix.
you got to get out. There's always you know, if you go in the other world inside yourself down a cave and hit bottom, instead of pick up the shovel, look for the ladder, start climbing out. Because then um it something happens in us when we understand that we can go all the way down and rise, because this, like the river, is life. There is no time and place where you don't get to suffer, but there's also great joy.
Mm.
And there's boredom, all of it.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh.
it's
Mm.
all part of it. And so you got to get bigger, for
Mm.
me anyway, to get larger, to let everything I experience have space. I could never be a good Zen Buddhist. I tried doing some sessions. I'm like, are you kidding me? I can't sit for 18 hours a day and way too holy.
Also holding it all at some point. I can't imagine you as a Zen Buddhist, no. But you're saying the same thing though, aren't you? Where the holding of it all, like it doesn't have to be judged. It is just all gristful. It's all part of the
It's very much meditation, and I can meditate. I feel like I struggled for a long time trying to figure out what meditation was until I realized, oh, that's what you're doing. Oh. So no, you don't have to, but everything has to be able to move. So I can go, and I think my greatest gift really is the embodiment of spirit, which is the East and the South. And so I naturally move from whatever the spirit is and embody it, you know. But and that moves around and makes art and all this other stuff. So it's not about like staying in the West or the East, or just becoming embodied and law and not doing anything with it. Because the minute you're embodied, truly embodied in yourself, your shadow appears. Because, you know, you're in between the sun, you know, and the earth. As I stand there, if the sun is hitting you, there's a shadow. That's how it works here. And the minute we are in our innocence, in our body, there's a shadow. And if we go toward the shadow and discover, you know, what do I mean by that? What is the shadow even of the rites of passage work? Well, there's lots of shadows. There's cultural appropriation shadow. There's the shadow of people who misuse power, you know. So there's shadow everywhere, and the brightest lights have big shadows, you know. So it's not having a shadow. It's keeping going in spite of that shadow, you know, back into some kind of commitment and work. When you let yourself down, well, then you got to keep going and do something, you know. It's like I feel like my whole life has been about succeeding, whatever that is, because it's not what the rest of the world said, in spite of all of the trials and tribulations of being a human woman born in a working class family, too big, in 1951 in Seattle, Washington. And I am of my time and place in all of my experience. Like if there's another life and I get born, hopefully not till after climate crisis. I'm sorry. If I get born in 100 years, I'm not going to be completely different. There's no way. This is my one life. This is our one life in this personality, in this being, and no matter if there's past lives or not. So to me, that's what rites of passage is understanding that and risking then being gifted instead of constantly falling into the cultural traps too. Because, you know, what are you going to do if you already got a family and 5 children? Well, that's your North Shield then. You're going to have to take care of that. But that doesn't mean you can't find ways to incorporate through grace, through prayer, through even asking for alone time, whatever it is that will bring balance and wholeness. So it's really always about moving.
Do many people from the corporate world? Do you meet many of them and on the?
Well, I think so, but often I don't know. I mean, they tell me, but I don't pay too much attention to what people say they do. We don't get I think we get less corporate people, certainly, than we get teachers and certainly all kinds of people, academics of all kinds, and therapists, of course, and then regular, office workers and lots of wilderness people who are working with youth and activists of all kinds, and women, lots of women. The women's fasts are always very full because women really, really got pissed again. And like I said, the shadow is, I mean, even the anger, the piss, and what causes it creates something that moves. And it's all okay. It hurts like hell. But somehow it's all okay. Nature isn't some sweet little fairy. Watch some true nature videos as they tear each other apart. The animals do. But somehow I have to integrate that, whether I like it or not. Either that or I have to die. And it's encoded in my body to fight death. So I haven't shot myself yet.
I guess, actually, just in terms of what have been the encounters that have been, I don't know, scary for you to really face your own shadow?
What kind of encounters specifically? I mean, one of the biggest, my life has been pretty odd, but one of my biggest challenges, but there were years when I had absolutely no money at all and no sense of poverty, right? No money at all, because I lived in communities where, you didn't need money. I didn't spend money. I didn't work, but no sense of poverty, no house, lived outside. But then when I returned to the world and had to get money to pay rent and all these things, and lots of poverty, lots of struggle, sometimes more internally than actually. It took me a while to believe I could actually make enough money to even live in a house. I mean, I own my house. I still make far less than most Americans, but I also don't need a whole bunch. So that's been one of my biggest. But, my mother, when I was born, I was told by my mother and my grandmother when I was in therapy and questioning them that my mother, when I was born, and she said that she hated me when I was born because I looked like her. And it was actually something that freed me in a way, because I understood that meant it had really nothing to do with me. It was completely her own self-hatred that she was, and it freed me in a way, and to move into the world that I became part of. By the time my mother died, there was great healing between us. So facing the shadow of, in one dream, it was the evil mother and her daughter. And facing the shadow, the belief that I would then, if I would be like her, I would batter children, which I haven't. Of course, I didn't have any to batter. Except myself. So, really my biggest shadow is how I treat myself. And that's often true for people who interject or take into themselves an abusive parent. I had to struggle and still do, and understand in myself the part of me that just gets crazy, angry at me, because that's my shadow. And I see it and know it, and I don't act upon it very much. I mean, I don't go around, I don't know, hitting my head against the wall. So that's one of the, I say that's my biggest thing I face, and have always, to appreciate myself as much as other people do. Or as one of my teachers says, you you give so much to everybody, but you just can't give it to yourself. So, yeah.
So wow, I guess I like the idea that you were, that 2.5 years ago sitting on that icy, and that icy cold, being reminded of your generosity to yourself.
Yeah. And to trust that even now. And I also trust that this is part of my human nature. I can't cut out of me the complexes, as they would say in some psychological circles. I see them as incomplete, fragmented parts of myself that I try to gather up and speak to them like, look. I say to the little girl who's all freaked out because mommy's battering her, look who you become. When I play, and I go, look around, look at all these paintings, you do that. So I think in many ways it's taking the time when we do, to comfort the parts of ourselves that are just really fragmented little pieces. And to be whole, you have to have everything. You can't just choose.
And nature reminds us of that.
Yeah. I mean, look at nature. It's the death and the decay that feed the plants, that feed the people, that feed the animals, that feed the people. So here you go again. It's all one big circle. And it's really genius. It's incredibly beautiful. I mean, astoundingly beautiful and very communicative, I think, when we look toward it with that understanding, knowing that. When you look at a tree and think, wood, no feeling, no nothing, just wood. When I saw first time I saw it, I've seen it only once, a really large tree cut down. Oh my God, what I felt in my body when it hit the ground was astounding. It was a big death to me. So who knows? I have a squirrely brain, so.
I suppose out of all the creatures, or what is there? Do you have a particular relationship with one of the? Is there something? There's your garden. I mean, this constant conversation of 14 years, but is there? Do you gravitate towards any particular?
Being, you mean?
Yeah, being or non-being, I guess.
Well, no, I think it's more generalized. It's like I always talk to trees. It's just wherever I happen to be in there. I mean, I'm certainly attached to like walking down the arroyo to the Rio Grande, which then becomes the lake, because they have a relationship with the whole environment. It's not just like, it's like I don't have favorites much in my life. I don't have favorite books or even favorite music. I'm in favorite music types probably, but no favorite teams. No, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I don't have a favorite color, even though I have ranges of colors I use more often than others. So I think it's just that it's more of a just larger than that. So, but yeah, definitely like the river.
Maybe the river. And so, just I suppose, sort of, I don't know. Is there advice? Is there for anybody sort of wanting to reconnect?
Look into the mirror. I did this when I was probably after I left that cult. So in my 40s, or when I was about 38, 39, 40 something. Look in the mirror every day and say, I love you, until you mean it. Until you really hear it back. And I say that when I say I love you to the land, it says it back to me. And it took me a while to really get that you got to let it in. So let your own love in. And that's one thing. And another thing I would suggest is every time you possibly can, take a walk alone on the land, even in a park. And just as a line in a room, he says, don't say anything. Just go outside, take a long walk, and just look. and see what happens.
Mm.
You know? If you're looking at the land as if it's alive and conscious, you just don't know what it might say to you if you're not trying to make it say something.
Mm.
I believe it was Marianne Williamson. I'm not sure for sure, but a poet I read had a quote, which is, if you want something to truly be, you have to give it both time and power. And as an artist, to me, that meant I have to give it time, decades. I mean, you have to give it time. People want to be an artist and then never do art, so you have to give it time. And then the power is it has to affect you. You have to let it be powerful, just like you have to give yourself both time and power. And going out on the land alone is a time to practice being powerful by its stance in body and mind and heart and what you say out loud, really loud maybe for some people. Some people, I don't need to be loud to be powerful. No, of course you don't. I could be powerful. I just don't like to. So practice giving things time and power. People give time and power to parenting, and they have wonderful children when they do that. Sometimes I think in the modern age, we're giving too much time away to have any power. You can't pour your power into your children or your work or your house or your this or your that or your endless classes or whatever it is people are endlessly doing in their 14-hour days on the phone. So nothing has time and power when you do that. You have to make a choice at some point in your life to commit. That's the North Shield. When the medicine called me at 30, I have done nothing but ceremony and art, which is ceremony. Since.
Calling you at 30? What was that?
30. Yeah, when I first saw a Native American medicine pipe, and I don't mean to appropriate anything other than its powerful connection awakened in me, my connection in a more conscious way to the natural world. And I allowed myself to be taken because it's just in there, it's just in there. And so try really hard in the work that we do at Lost Borders not to really be appropriating anything. It's cross-cultural rites of passage. There's fasting, but fasting's in all traditions. We don't do pipes or sweat lodges or have native names, and we're not natives. Maybe some people are a little bit, I don't know. But I self-generated ceremony, which is what we call it. I don't know why, but for me, it's really the connection that comes out of your bones. Everybody is from the earth. And European ancestors, yes, way too long ago, walked the earth and prayed and had ceremony and danced and drummed and made medicine out of plants, just like everybody else all over this large planet. And so when we are all of the planet, then we can think globally instead of all this me, my, mine, I hate you, you hate me, let's kill all of this or that. And it's happening everywhere all the time. And it's really...
the May Day, isn't it? Which is the traditional celebration of all fertility and and then stepping into that threshold of summer and so it's there in us, but we've forgotten, haven't we? So many ceremonies.
Oh, absolutely. And many that I'm sure we forgot. When you have in the psyche and the bones of the ancestors, trauma, just like Native people still carry trauma, we do too. Women were burnt at as witches, not only women, men too, and gay people and gypsies. They were children, people butchered and tortured for several centuries. So the psyche of women go, oh shit, this is dangerous. And we went underground. Well, let's spend some time now. And the goddess is back, whatever that means. To me, it's the marriage of the goddess and the god. And that's very much the European story. When you marry those two energies, you have the third. You have the wholeness that is you. Or they can call it Jesus. They can call it gold in alchemy. I don't care. The self.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
Yeah, no, we all belong here.
Mm.
There's too many of us here, I think. Way too many of us. I wish people would stop having so many babies.
I've done my bit. You've done your bit.
Yeah, all done with that. Thank God. Huh? And almost, I know a lot of women who never had children.
Also, you know how you followed your nose. You know, you've had the
Right.
calling, and so you know you had the river. You've got the medicine pipe, and what other, you know, like in weird times. I think I remember you saying about in Dublin, or you did. Were you in Dublin?
Yes, trees in Ireland. I was in Ireland. Now, I had already met Stephen and Meredith. I
Okay.
had done a vision fast with them,
Mm.
but no idea at all that I was going to be a guide. And they didn't have other people working with them. It was just them. And I had already had plans to go to Europe for the first time, you know, because I got some money selling art. I mean, I never had any money, and I still didn't, but I didn't know that because I didn't have any sense of what money actually was. Having a few $1,000s was a lot of money to me. So I flew to Europe and ended up, it was a terrible trip. I did not have fun. I'm not a traveler, and I just don't get it too much. It's not intimate enough to me. At any rate, I was in Ireland, and I was in a park basically with some trees, and these trees, I didn't know where to go, what to do next. And they said, I asked the trees, and they said, move to Big Pine, do your art, and take people out fasting. That's all they said. And trees usually talk to me in that way. It's usually just like boom, boom, boom. And I have a habit of, I'm very obedient to the land and to nature, but not to other people. So don't ever try to tell me to do anything, because I trust the land. I really do.
Because
Other people don't necessarily have my best interests at heart, and they don't know that. I'd say in some ways, many of us sometimes have to, on one level, fight off well-intentioned people who think they know better than I who and what I should be.
sure. Yeah. Well, is it what is was it James Hillman? I love that. You know that reclaiming the soul is a daily practice. You know, reclaiming our own
Yes.
personal authority because we've given it away. You know, to
Yes.
our parents, to our teachers, to our
And
society.
culture's set up for you to give it away. You don't really have a choice but to give it away. You know, and super strong people never lose it. You know, there's children somehow, I don't know if that's soul or spirit, that, you know, make great masterpieces at 7 years old. And I just go, what the hell is that? So everybody's path is different.
Yes.
Oh.
And
But I think the most important thing again is having the whatever it takes to risk, because it's risky to be authentic. And you will be rejected, and you will be, I mean, I was like not treated well as a young child or a young person, somewhat because I'm sure I was very full of all kinds of creative powers and energies. And my mother said she had no idea what to do with me. You know, I was not like her other children until I got shut down, and then had to explode out through a psychotic episode to get it out of me, and then not get any professional help from the world, because that's not what was on the menu. I needed to find my way back, and did, you know, from internal sources. So I think, you know, again, I'm very introverted, even though I seem extroverted, because I have an internal compass and trust. I trust now. I probably wasn't true 50, 60 years ago. I trust the internal source implicitly. And the natural world. People, I go, I don't know. No, I trust some people, of course, within reason.
That synergy of your own voice, but also the intimacy of nature.
Yeah.
That inner
Knowing. You know, my intuition is pretty astounding sometimes, and it's just like, you know, things happen that I've known about. But I think that intuition comes from nature, you know, and it's through the body. And it's natural to us if we listen to our instincts, which are in the body. And so instinctually, I know things. Like I might meet somebody and know, oh, they Well, here's a simple example. There was this guy who told his fasting story, and you know me, I sing, and this was even before I sang all the time. And I started singing a song just out of the blue, and it was the song he sang the entire fast without ever telling us that's what he sang. So that's in the field. That's what I call the field. And doing a lot of ceremony and listening to stories and doing your own fast and stuff makes me very aware, and anybody I would think very aware of what's in the field, and then trusting yourself to just do without censoring too much. That doesn't mean there isn't a time to censor, like when you're, I don't know.
Well, that's interesting. This censorship and
Yeah.
we in a society where we're seeing so much censorship.
Sure.
But our own censorship.
Sure, and in the societies where it's dangerous to be who you are, where you might be, I mean, you know, witch hunts aren't over. It could be dangerous to be a lesbian in Turkey, or, you know, to be all kinds of things. It could be dangerous to be a Christian someplace. It is dangerous to be a Christian or whatever in certain places. So your ability to be authentic is just like, that's dangerous to be a child in an abusive family. Boom. You know, you have to truly get to the place where somehow you can physically survive it. And if you don't, well, you don't, I suppose. But I don't know. I do feel lucky that I was born when I was, because it was a time of great opening when I graduated from high school in 1969, you know. And so I got to live the 70s, which had its challenges, but you know, there's not that kind of freedom for people today. Just in space, the numbers of people, oh my God. You know, I can't go to places I used to go camping when I was young where never anybody was there. And now they're not even wilderness anymore.
You don't feel that?
Huh?
You don't feel like you?
No, I don't go to places that I used to go when I was in my 20s, mostly in Washington State. No, it's too, it's very crowded. It's very different.
Yeah. I suppose there is a question, and it might be sort of what were the big influences in your life? Who have they been?
Well, different for different things. I'd say my grandfather, from the time I was a little child, because I knew he loved me. He was my anchor. And still my relationship in the inner world with the grandfathers is very big. And I know that has to do with, in fact, if I say I'm married, it's to the grandfathers, it feels to me in some manner. Whatever that means, based on dreams and experiences I've had. But then I would say in my 20s, it would have been, once I started to awaken a bit, things like Karl Marx. I would say in my mid-20s, I was a radical feminist, Marxist, Leninist, Buddhist therapist.
Holding it all.
All of it. And then I gave up all isms after that. So, you know, I was reading Marx and Tibetan Buddhism and having therapy, Gestalt therapy and dream work, and all at the same time. And so they all fit to me. And I was reading Jung. I read all of Jung, not all of Jung. I read a lot of Jung in between college, because I went to community college, took 2 years off, and became a Marxist and all kinds of things. And then went back to college and to do dance movement therapy. But I learned and read a great deal in between the two, more than I actually did in college, actually. So all of these were all saying the same thing to me.
Yes.
You know, and then art just, when I was doing dance movement therapy and I sang spirit, I was feeling myself as a river, and I didn't know what to call that then. And art started pouring out of me. I started painting. And I didn't paint. I wasn't trying to make art. You know, I'm still not really trying to make art.
Yeah.
You know, I was sat on the floor with watercolor, you know, 2 watercolors and paper, and would paint painting after painting after painting, like 10 of them in 3 hours. And they were just, you know, nothing. They were just like stick figures. Or I remember one was a hairy ball with teeth, you know, floating by, or they were just an expression. And then I would put them on the wall and they would surround me in my bedroom in college. And I did hundreds of them until I left Seattle and started my 10-year adventure living in Atlanta. And I didn't paint at all during that time, really, a little bit. And then when I left that, it just started again. And I didn't truly start painting seriously until I was like 39. And I haven't, and now I paint. I'm a painter, but I'm still not trying to make art so much. I don't like the art world, and I am not part of it, and they don't like me and I don't like them. And
how has your art changed in that time then?
Oh, it's a great deal. My art is far more fluid than it was. I taught myself how to paint, basically. And because I do landscapes, a lot of landscapes, but often they have, I'll show you sometime. I mean, all over the house here, there's sculptures and paintings in my art studio. And right now you're just seeing one painting there.
Yeah, love that. Do you want to do a little tour? I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, I can just, you can tell, ow, I have to go slowly. I've been sitting, so I'm all people go, ah, oh, okay, here I go. Here we go, walk around the big old dog on the ground. She's sleeping. Okay, this is, these are singers, and these are sculptures. I do. There's a shelf full of singers there. I don't know if you can actually see them very well. Can you see them?
Yeah, they certainly are singing.
Yeah, and there's many of those. I've made hundreds of these over the years. There's a bunch here. These are big ones, big singers. And then paintings.
I love those.
Let's see. There's paintings. Let's try this way. Like, I just sold a painting, so it's gone there. But there's paintings really everywhere.
Oh, it reminds me of that beautiful landscape being in there.
Yeah. And this is just the living room. This is, oh, there's a painting.
Reader. Okay.
Yeah. So at any rate, lots of art. You want to see my studio?
Yeah, go on.
This is my studio. So let's see. This is a painting that I'm working on. That's a river painting. Look at that. These are all things I'm working on. This is my ceramic area.
Yeah.
And these are plates.
Oh, let's see, go down. Oh, I love.
These are all plates that are all river paintings. Like, might be easier if I like this. See.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah, they really are. And I started making them, and they're not difficult to do. They don't take too long. I don't have to charge a great deal for them. And they're easy to ship, unlike the singers.
Yes.
Who break more. So anyway, do a lot of art.
Yeah, no, it's so, because you're in that every day, isn't it? You dawn walk and.
Yeah, I walk. Well, I don't walk at dawn in the winter. It's cold. But now I'm starting to walk early, and then I spend time in my studio. But also I have a lot of email and Zoom calls these days, and phone meetings, and but yeah, and it's different in the summer. I go out in the garden in the morning, and my garden is out here, and this is my backyard, my back garden.
Actually, I remember. I remember sitting out there having our feast.
Yes.
Go back and God.
Right.
What was then?
It's just growing right now. There's spring onions and flowers haven't really started blooming, but gonna be planting things pretty soon.
Well, darling, yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Well, I think that's yeah. On that note, is there anything else? Is there anything else that you want to or share, or in terms of your guiding going on, or anything?
Well, I mean, is as COVID-19 departs from our atmosphere, I do hope I will continue guiding for at least another few years. You know, I just turned 69.
Mm.
I'm planning to work until I die.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, that'll be. And then, of course, if I get too old, I won't be able to. And so you better get me while you can. But this year,
Yeah.
who knows this year? We're, you
Mm.
know, and every year. Um, I do a little work online, like on Zoom and stuff, but it's different. It's not the same.
What like?
Well, I've done some Zoom councils
Mm.
with my local community of women because we can't gather in person. We in Las Borders are talking about maybe, depending on how long this goes on, because we may end up canceling all our programs this year. We don't know. Doing things like offering to people to do individual work over Zoom, to teach them the force field, send them out for a walk.
Mm.
It would only be like day things like that,
Yeah.
because you can't send strangers, without preparation, out onto the land. And if they're not with us, our insurance company would freak. But at any rate, stuff like that. And I do that anyway with people who have fasted before.
Mm. Yeah. 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 I can really make it see it work, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice.
Yeah.
God, how many hundreds of people have you helped? God, yeah.
Have been in my event and ceremony?
God, how many?
Well, somebody asked me once that, and I thought, some hundreds, but actually it's probably 2 to 3 or more thousand, because I don't know. Lots.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's when I understood a bit. I went, that's a hell of a lot of people. I exist inside of them, because we all do that, particularly with people who are in some ways, I know people project a lot onto me, and I know that, and that's part of my role.
Yeah.
And then they take in, this person who saw them as beautiful and gifted, even in their darkness, and says, I stand with you, that makes a difference. And then that's inside that person in the mythological realm. So when you're out on the land, and if you feel like you've crossed a threshold into the mythological realm, call for me, because I'm out there.
So, that's lovely. Well, I'll do a pause here, and while close up, and then do you want to say something about that, like your own? Because I can not say it's about School of Lost Borders. This can be an opportunity for that. Do you want to?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just say something. Well, I can.
Well,
might have to edit now, but
18-month training that it's going to be done for the first time. Generally, we want people who've already fasted once, who know that they want to commit to this long, because it's not short. It's 5 different meetings. The first one would be introductions. We would teach the 4 shields in it. There would be day walks and the beginning of mirroring and what mirroring is, and a 24-hour fast. Really working with the intent of the entire training, right? And so it'd be probably 5 days. And our thought was to start that in March, the late March, in Death Valley National Park. This may change because of COVID. I don't know how the world will change by then. And then the second one would be what we call a mirroring training, which would be another 5 days with 5 walks and in nature and stories. And it would be, everybody would be learning how to mirror stories from nature. And then the third one would be another 5 or 6 days. It would be about intent. And so we'd be working on what do we mean with intent for a vision quest, or a vision fast, or a rite of passage, or even in life, intent and commitment. and that would include another 24-hour fast. And during it, each person would come up with their intent for their 4-day fast.
Mm.
And there'd be mirroring and things like that. So, and then the fourth one would be a 4-day fast. And we thought that would be the following March in 2023, again in Death Valley. And the others would be in New Mexico. But this all may change based on reality. So, and then there would be one more the following, if the fast was in winter, then there would be one more the following early summer that would be called incorporation. And it would be 5 days of, well, we don't know yet, because part of this also is during it, people will be taking more and more responsibility for the organization of the ceremonies, for for running them, for equipment, for how do you get an entire group of people to Death Valley. We would stop doing that, and the group would figure it out, and we'd all be part of it, because there'll be like a Zoom councils in between each meeting, and
like the parallel process of that.
Yeah, and then the final one, incorporation, would really the group itself would design and run that ceremony.
Right.
And they may have another 24-hour fast. We don't know, but and that would be the end. But the end officially, maybe not the end, because for me, part of the intent of this is to create a ceremonial community so people really can get that in their bodies and in themselves. And it's up to them to keep it. I'm going to die. So, it's not up to me.
But that is the interesting thing about the ongoing integration and evolving and the community part of it. I think that's interesting.
Right. And then see what happens. And because there's no way to know, all we have is the bare bones, and that's all we ever have. And that's why I can keep doing this work, because every ceremony is different. It's never the same. But the bare bones are the same. And so once we have this basic structure, and it'll be tweaked. This would be the first time. Maybe I'll get to do it 2 or 3 times in the next decade, because it's a year and a half.
Yeah, that's a lovely offering. I really like the logic of it, and also allowing that space in between, isn't it, to really get it integrated.
Right, and then it's long. Each part of it is elongated. Yes. You got 5 days for intent, not an hour when we're working with you. So really, and then everybody learns and the ceremony itself has a say in how all this happens. Sure. It does to me anyway. And so, yeah. And then when I do that, I'm going to stop doing things like that was the plan anyway, like the midwinter fast, because I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take some things away. Yeah. That's the plan anyway.
Thank you so much, Em. I'm just.
Oh, you're welcome.
So much fun. And I will, for this, I'll pause, and I'll say something for the listeners about just pausing here, and we'll see you back here for the next Earth Converse podcast, and tell us what you think and what you need to make it more because we want these podcasts to be meaningful and helpful for you. But in the meantime, connect with Earth, and one conversation at a time. Ciao.